Still getting ready.
Oh, your cap. Look at Jed.
All right, now I'm ready. Let's chat. Let's do this.
Well, awesome. Welcome, Jed, Gary, and Ben. And welcome, Branditos. Welcome to Brand Chat. We have the video side of the chat and then also the Twitter side. Gary, Mr. McFly, will be handling the video side, so I'm going to mute myself and I'll jump in every now and again. And for the Twitter side, as far as the tweet chat, I'll be taking care of that. So make sure you're asking your questions and making your responses in there because I'm going to be watching for that. We want the same kind of engagement and interaction and also the contribution from the Branditos. So welcome. Ben and Jed, thank you for both being here and being able to share and contribute your insights and your experiences in Snapchat.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
All right.
Hey, wait, this is the first time Ben and I have been on camera together.
That's right.
Fist bump, Ben Figo.
All right.
Snapchat man.
Been long enough, right?
Yeah, man.
All right, sounds good. By the way, I appreciate, Jed, I appreciate your hashtag mug and your Brandito cap that you're wearing right now. So that's all great. Yes.
Breaking out the Twitter chat mug.
Yes, absolutely. So, hello, everyone. I'm glad everyone is here. I know some more people are coming in over time. So welcome to the people who are not yet here but are on their way. So today we're talking about Snapchat a lot. And the first question is a pretty easy one that I think goes along with the introductions. So for everyone that is out there, with your introduction, please let us know what your Snapchat handle is so that we can all follow and share and do all the wonderful actual social things that social media is actually about. So, Ben, if you'd like to start, we can go to Jed.
Absolutely. Mine is actually Figo Americano, and there's a long story behind that name, but that's what it is. And yeah, I shoot a lot of dumb little stories, usually pretty silly and stupid, but hey, they're fun. That's what I do.
That's great. Jed?
So you'll follow me. I'm about to tweet into the chat here. Let's see. Boom, that should work. And comes with instructions. Just like Ben posted, just point your Snapchat at the screen. Hold your thumb on the screen, and it will add Ben and I. And while we're chatting, please feel free to add your own snap pic, and maybe at some point during the chat, we'll talk a little bit about how Ben and I were able to save these images so that we can share them on our social media channels, which is an important thing to do when you're wanting to get an audience on Snapchat.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Definitely.
And for those listening, it's Jed Record. It's the same handle on Twitter and Snapchat and all the others.
Yeah, mine was taken. Somebody who doesn't ever snap or do anything has my stinking handle.
Yeah, I seem to have the same issue. So some of my handles are Mr. McFly, and others are actually Mr. spelled out for various reasons, and it's slightly annoying. But you know what? We live and we still prosper.
That's right.
So let's see. Everyone else, please jump in and add your Snapchat handles. And if you don't have a Snapchat handle, why not? Get on Snapchat. What's taking you so long? It's been out for years. That's it. So while those answers are coming through, let's go to a question with a bit more meat to it, especially one that I know a lot of people are wondering. So let's start with question 2, which is, what can Snapchat do for brands that other social media platforms cannot?
Well, Jed, you want to jump on that first?
Sure. So what can Snapchat do for brands? Well, it's what we've been talking about on Brand Chat for a long time now, and that is humanizing your brand. So Snapchat is, like, in my opinion, one of the best platforms there is to humanize or personalize or give people a deeper connection into not only whoever's running the Snap handle, but your brand as well. And we'll talk, I don't want to go into a bunch of examples of what brands are doing now, but particularly for smaller businesses, which is what I'm researching now for how they can get on Snapchat and use Snapchat as a tool, I think it provides a great opportunity to provide behind the scenes and just real personalized snaps and views so that the customer can really have a insider connection to the brand, whether it's a personal brand or whether it's a small business or what have you.
Absolutely. So one of the things I think is really interesting about Snapchat that a lot of people probably don't really consider or understand, and Jed was kind of alluding to it, is, Snapchat is absolutely a jabbing platform. That is where you retain or nurture or cultivate your community. It's something that a lot of, I think, especially in the marketing areas, people think that that's where you go to sell stuff. It's not. I mean, you can, yes, but that's not what it's there for, and that's not what it's best for. What it's best for is really developing those relationships. It's really one-on-one, humanizing, getting people excited about what you do. So I think that's something that a lot of people don't really focus on. They're trying to make it work for what they want it to do, and not really understanding the mentality of the platform altogether.
Yeah, that's a point that I feel like a lot of us go over a lot. The fact that a lot of business people seem to forget, oh yeah, you're trying to actually create some sort of relationship where someone would like to come back to you or speak to you, and not just sell, and sell some more. So everyone who's listening, please, because I know the Branditos know this already, but please continue to remind your clients and other people that do not get this for whatever reason, that a relationship with a customer or a consumer is very important to both customer acquisition and retention. You want people to buy your stuff. You can't just force them to buy anything. You have to actually have some sort of relationship where they actually not only like your product, but they like you. That keeps them coming back. Yeah. Let's see. I know some more answers must be coming in from the other Branditos. Let's see. One, Mariah Martinez, the more personal you can get with your brand, the more engagement you can bring forth within your community. That's another point. Yes, community. It's a thing. It's actually necessary. We talk about it a lot in social, but sometimes I feel like we miss the point and talk a little bit too much about community and not what the importance of it is. And because some people just don't get it, we have to remember to speak about the importance of community, not just the necessity of having one.
Exactly. And I think, along the same lines is when you have one, if you do not grow it or cultivate it, it will die.
Absolutely.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes. Another question came through from Mary Hannon. How does Snapchat correlate with retention? Just by liking, sorry, my screen is going crazy. Just by liking the brand's personality. That's part of it. And because everything is a relationship, we do need to make sure that we are covering all parts of the relationship that we can. So it's not necessarily just a one-to-one thing. Just like with any relationship, you have to continue to do things to cultivate it, to nurture it, to make sure that you are doing what you can without putting yourself out to help make the person who in this case maybe or is actually giving you money happy. You have to do it under a certain set of parameters, but you still do have to try your best to make people happy. One of your brand's promises is that's going to make someone's life better. So the more ways you can show that you are going to do that, the better it is for you.
Yeah, I just want to respond to
Absolutely.
a comment in the chat there that Snapchat is for the young, and I've been doing some research on Snapchat that yes, originally started with a younger demographic. The fastest growing demographic for Snapchat is 25 to 35, and even in the 35 and up category, like 35 to 50, is still a fast growing category for Snapchat as well. And Ben might have some comments on this as well, but when trying to find out what is driving older people to the platform that's interesting to them, it's when Snapchat went to the story feature. That was the turning point. That basically opened the floodgates for people who were interested in sharing with others, with more than just one person. And although you can share with your friends, multiple friends, by clicking the check next to each of the ones you want to share with, adding that story feature really
Changed everything.
Yeah, it really broke open the dam, and it's just been on a huge roll ever since. And I'm sure very exciting times over at Snapchat HQ.
Absolutely. And this is one of the things that I see and hear all the time, and I'm seeing quite a bit of it right now as well, is, oh, well, you know what, we don't have, our audience isn't on Snapchat. Well, about 5 years ago, that conversation was happening about Instagram. Now what happened?
And Snapchat is growing faster than Instagram.
Snapchat's growing faster than anything ever has.
Yeah.
And, I put up a little video a little bit ago about, the fact that Snapchat now records over 6 billion video views a day, billion with a B. Now, granted, some people say, well, if they don't watch the entire video, it still, counts as a view. That's true, but that's 6 billion times. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. So if you think that there's no reason for you to be there, well, then, you want to pull your head out of the sand at some point, because Snapchat's growing up very fast. There are now more people on Snapchat over the age of 25 than under. So if you think this is just for teenagers, you're wrong. You've got less than 50% of the people in that demographic. So, right. I mean, if you think your brand doesn't have an audience on Snapchat, that just means that you don't want to get on Snapchat, in my opinion. And quite honestly, if you get on now and you start cultivating an audience now, even though you're like, oh, well, we don't have someone there yet, but guess what? You eventually will. So when do you want to get started on building that community? Do you want to be ahead of the curve or behind the curve? And that's something that to really consider. When people jumped into Instagram in the very early years, they're seeing the profits and the benefits of it now, because they were in the land grab phase. Okay. This is the sooner boom, right? So if you can get in there and you can carve out your little chunk of land, you're going to be better off for it in the future. So you can bury your head in the sand, but it's only to your own demise.
Yeah, I mean that's also a very good point. That people actually grow. That's something that I've been kind of at odds with the community of people who are like, you have to go after millennials, you have to do this, but millennials don't use email. And then all of a sudden there are studies saying, well, the millennial demographic is starting to adopt email a bit more. And part of the reason for that is the fact that they're getting older, so now they have to use email, or there's ways that email actually are more important to them now, because all your marketing things, unless it's some sort of one-off campaign, are built for long-term relationships. We have to remember, there is something about getting people now, but there's also getting people when they're ready to do something. So we have to make sure that we remember that. And just quickly to jump on the point, of 6 billion views, and saying, well, not all of those are full views. If you want to just kind of take a guess and go on the very low end of the guess, you have to figure at least 1 billion of those are full views. And
that's a lot.
Yeah, 1 billion, that's a pretty big number,
Well, 6 billion views that's a view, that's an impression. So if we're counting impressions, we're not when I'm talking with brands and they're doing their measurements and stuff, they are measuring that as an impression. Now we have a question in just a minute about how we measure our results on Snapchat, and I can jump the gun and go into that now, or we can talk about it in a minute. But a viewing impression from a Snap story is the same as an impression for a tweet. So we're looking at the same. We're not saying that a partially viewed Snap or one that got skipped through doesn't count because they viewed it. So I want to be careful that we don't just start throwing some of these views out as they don't count, because when they get an impression of that ad or that Snap, there's no unimpressioning it.
Right.
You don't unwatch
Well,
it.
and here's the other thing. I mean, I wrote an article about this yesterday. It was kind of a little rant article. It wasn't very long. And, I talked about the fact that, the way that YouTube and Facebook measure a view of a video, okay, Facebook measures it if you've watched 3 seconds of the video, it counts as a view, right? And that's including their autoplay. So that's an inflated stat. You look at YouTube, okay, I have to watch 30 seconds for it to count as a view, even if it's, a 10-minute video. So again, you're not getting the whole thing. But what's the difference? If I'm watching a video on YouTube or on Facebook, I can have it playing on my computer while I'm doing other stuff. Okay? Snapchat is mobile
if
only.
you watch 3% of a Snap, you've watched 30% of it. And that's a lot better viewing than three seconds of a YouTube video. Certainly not 30%.
Okay, so here's the other thing is the fact that Snapchat is mobile only. Okay? There's nothing else you can do with your device while you're viewing something on Snapchat. That's not the same as with YouTube. With YouTube, you can pull it down. You can search for the next video. If you're on mobile, with Facebook, you're watching it for a second, or you just let it autoplay as you're scrolling through your feed. Okay. When you watch something on Snapchat, you literally have to watch that and only that. You can't go on to anything else unless you tap through. And even if you tap through, you're still in the person's story. So, I mean, come on. What are we? Those who say that it's not that big a deal, I think are the ones that have either never experienced it, or they just dabbled in it for 30 seconds and I don't get this. This is for young kids. And then they moved on. And that's too bad. That's their own expense.
And Evan talks about this when he's talking about his big, Evan Spiegel, the CEO, has talked about what is attracting these big companies, these big advertisers to foot bills. You have to step up with about $750,000 to be an advertiser on Snapchat. So what's causing these big brands to step up for that? And Evan talks about it and says that you're taking over the screen. You get the entire screen of the phone, and brands are really, really loving that. So that is a huge factor it's coming into play when brands are looking at running ads on Snapchat.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's just. I'm sorry. Sorry, Maria.
I
Go ahead, Maria.
just wanted to jump in because there's some comments here, because I did see what you saw, Ben, too. A lot of people making comments, and you as well, Jed, saw that it's for the younger group, and absolutely, I think that's a fear factor too. I know that's been my fear factor for a little while, and that's why I lurk on Snapchat. So I'm on there, but I'm a lurker. But there are some questions people have about, how do you handle it, or how would you recommend using it for B2B? And I loved, I saw Ben tweeted out, Ben and Gary, you guys being able to GIF and do all this at the same time. That's why I'm on mute. You can't hear me clicking away. But, if you guys would speak to that for just a little bit on business to business, some ideas and some thoughts on that would be helpful before we go on to the next question. Is that all right, Gary?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Well, I think, and like I said in the Twitter section, is remember that B2B is still person to person. You're still talking to a human being. So if you get one of those decision makers at this organization you're trying to connect with, you get one of them into your fold and they become a personal fan of yours, well, guess what? You got the decision maker. You just accomplished what you were trying to do. You don't only have to talk to the brand image. You need to talk to the people. And that's why we talk about humanization. It's not just about humanizing your brand, but turning the brands you're trying to communicate into humans. It's just something that I think a lot of us lose track of. But again, at the end of the day, only a human being can tap on the screen, not a brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And anytime someone says something about B2B not being good for any channel on social, I point them directly to General Electric. like GE is a B2B industry, like old school industry brand for a lot of people. And they're doing some of the most amazing things that are being done on all social channels because they have a very clear idea of who they're looking for and they're speaking to those people. That's why it works. That's why it works for anyone.
So one of the caveats I do want to bring out here is that you cannot enter into the Snapchat world if you do not have people on your team who are creative. This is the most creative platform there is today on social media. There's a tweetable. I'll tweet it out. There we go. So I really believe that Snapchat is by far the most creative storytelling platform on social media. And by that, you need to take advantage of that creativity. So you have to have people on your staff who could come up with creative ideas, or you need to be working with an agency that is those capabilities of having some creative stories to come out of Snapchat. And for that reason, the number one strategy for brands advertising on Snapchat is to go to the influencers and get the influencers who are already creating that creative content and getting them to integrate the brand story into their creative stories. And so far, that's been working pretty well. Walmart did a big thing this past weekend, getting people ready for, was it Black Friday? Is that what it is? Yeah. So over the weekend, they had a bunch of the biggest influencers on Snapchat building into their stories ways that they can share Walmart's message of getting ready for Black Friday, and I think it was fairly successful. What do you think about that, Ben? You saw those stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's something that I know we're going to talk about a little bit later, but still, I mean, the idea, if you're a brand or you have a small business that you want to get into Snapchat, like Jed said, make sure you have somebody creative, but more importantly, have somebody that actually uses the platform, please. Not somebody that they're learning on your nickel. That would be preferential because that means they actually know what they're doing. But yeah, absolutely. One of the other things that brands can do very intelligently is leverage the power of influencers. Find people that already have a following on Snapchat and utilize them. Okay, this is like the new TV where it started off with product placement as being the way to advertise because everyone hates commercials. And that's exactly what we're looking at here is you find those influencers. I know Disney did it back on their anniversary earlier this year, their 60th anniversary. And they had a couple influencers, 2 very large influencers on Snapchat, take over their account for the day and go through the entire park celebrating the event. Now, that's a great way to build an audience if you don't have one already, because the influencers are putting on their account saying, hey, you need to come follow me here because I'm going to be here doing this and talking about this. Walmart very intelligently is doing that. They're starting to drive conversation about, what to do for Black Friday, how to prepare, and it's all about being useful. Jay Bear talks about utility. That's what you need to be. And so finding a way to do that, but also leveraging the power of those influencers. Have influencers talk about, this is what you can do to prepare for it, and here's what we can do. And oh, by the way, Walmart does it great. So, those are the things to be thinking about. And quite honestly, B2B or even B2C is going to be very, very interesting on Snapchat in the coming year.
Yes. So let's quickly just jump on. I mean, we've kind of been in Q3 already, but let's throw it to the room and maybe add a couple more examples. What are the pitfalls and opportunities to mastering Snapchat? Just a few more.
Well, I'll jump in on that one because I have some strong opinions. I think the biggest thing I see when people jump in is not respecting the mentality of the agenda that you have there, okay? Your agenda should be based on why and how people use the platform, okay? If you're going in there to sell, too bad. That's not where you don't start off with, the second date. You start off with the first date. So, respect the mentality. And when I say mentality, don't be importing third-party images and things like that just show. I mean, come on, really? If I use Snapchat every single day and I see something like that, I know it's not natural, and I think, oh, here we go. Somebody's being lazy and they're just bringing it in because it's quick and easy. You have to be creative. You have to respect the platform. You have to respect the mentality, and you have to be very conscious of your agenda.
Absolutely. So true. So very, very true. Jed, do you have any more to add?
Yeah, I would agree with Ben on that. The pitfall of using third-party apps, that is going to be a bigger pitfall because they are shutting those down and will shut down accounts using those third-party apps.
Mm-hmm.
So I highly recommend staying clear of anything like that. I've spoken with some of these influencers that are doing some really exciting stories on Snapchat. And one of my questions was related to that, doing things that would otherwise appear to be impossible using the native app. And it was pretty interesting to hear the responses. The ones that I spoke to, and I spoke to Opera Americana last week, and she does fantastic stories, but one of her stories I noticed had an animation in the video, which is not something you can do native on the app. And so I asked her about it. I said, what's the deal? Are you, I didn't accuse her. I just said, I'm curious, how do you do those things? Well, many of these influencers have multiple phones. And what she told me is that during their filming of this Snap story, I wish I had a copy of it to show you. But basically, there was drawn animation that she had drawn over top of video. And what she did is she drew portions of the animation and saved the video and then erased her drawing and redrew the next screen or the next frame of her animation over the video, saved it, erased it, and did it over and over again. I mean, it must have been exhausting for her to do this and take a long time. Then she combined all of those videos she ran it through another app that just kind of compressed the videos together and then played it back on another phone and recorded it from her phone off of the screen of the other phone. So while it wasn't all native within the app, she did sketch each of those animations by hand, played it back, no third-party app involved. So to me, that's another example of how creative these influencers are with using the platform. And it just reinforces the fact that you have to just think outside of the box, be as creative as you can, yet stick within the rules of the game plan, like Ben's saying. Because when you go to third-party apps and you hire some videographer or graphic artist to try and emulate art that's being done by hand with everyone else, people are going to see right through that, and they're gonna unfollow.
Right. And I see a lot of things that are warming my heart in the chat because I'm seeing the word strategy come up a whole lot. And as a strategist, I like when people actually say strategy because for whatever reason, some people still forget that it's necessary. Now that we've talked a little bit about strategy and its importance and pitfalls and opportunities,
we do have one other question.
Magical question. Oh, sure.
Gary, before we go on, we do have Mary Gannon had asked Ben, how do companies with a professional corporate image create a fun Snapchat brand? Can we cross personalities, or is that going against the brand image? So if you would speak to that before we jump to Q4, and I'll queue up Q4, Gary.
Okay. Yeah, I think.
Ben and I might disagree on this. I'll let Ben go.
Yeah, I tried to jump in with a really quick and simple answer, but it doesn't have to be all a brand or a logo. Really, it's not going to be effective if you're snapping with a logo. What you really want to do is find somebody to be the image. Find somebody that can be the personality of it, or just find the brand's personality, make sure that shows through. Great example was 2 weeks ago for National Sandwich Day. Subway had a fantastic Snapchat story where they went around their entire office and demonstrated the different personalities of people that you come across when, you're going to go buy a sandwich, and they're the ones that are trying to, mooch off you and all that kind of stuff. And so, they had fun with it, and it's people within the office being stupid. That is a great way to really humanize and make the brand personal. And not at any point in there did you have a big old logo, for Subway popping up saying, buy our sandwiches, buy our sandwiches. It was all about just being stupid and silly and having fun. And that's one of the things that you really have to do is be intelligent, be creative, like Jed was saying, and you don't have to spend hours and hours and hours on this. Half the stories I do, I put 3 minutes of planning in before I actually did it. It's not that complicated. You just have to be thinking like somebody that would be watching. And don't try to make it about your brand or about your logo. Make it about people, and it's going to work.
So I agree with Ben on making it about people. That's why companies like Disney, Coca-Cola, and a number of other big brands, Walmart, are hiring influencers and sponsoring influencers' stories. So if you are a brand with a corporate image, then don't try and goof on yourself, is my suggestion, because it will just look ridiculous. Find a way and work with influencers. Reach out to influencers and ask them, we want to be part of the creative stuff that you're doing. Let's work together on creating a creative Snapchat story about Apple. So Apple did a Snapchat story with Opera Americano, Tristan Tales, some other people on Snapchat. And I thought it was very creative and didn't make Apple look silly and didn't it didn't make it look childish or anything. So that's a pretty big brand that's got a certain brand message, right? And I think they stayed on message with those influencers.
Yeah.
But not every brand, not every company is right for Snapchat. You don't have to be on every platform. Snapchat might not be the right platform. I love the platform. I think most brands could be on the platform if they're creative enough in how they want to do it. But when I say creativity and creativeness, I don't mean goofiness or silliness. You can come up with creative ways to be on Snapchat that aren't goofy and silly. But humor is a huge part of the platform and will work very well, if you can embrace it. So, evaluate if this is the platform, if the demographic of your customer base is on this platform and you want to reach them and you feel like you've got a certain brand image you want to uphold, I would go to an influencer, hire influencers and let them be the creative talent.
Yeah, with a lot of the companies that don't think that they're good for Snapchat or some sort of other visual or otherwise social medium, a lot of the answer as to how they can do it is actually in finding that creativity. How do you creatively communicate what you have to offer? When you figure that out, that helps you define what channels you're going to use, how you're going to do it. So
follow CoverGirl and CNET Snaps. Maybe I'll put their things in there.
CNET's
Those are two examples that come to mind. Mm-hmm. So CNET Snaps is a great example of using the platform to provide utility, but not not having to be too over the top, right? Exactly. So they just pop in when they have something interesting to share and give you like a 5 to 10 second news bite. And it's really cool. I enjoy following their accounts. I enjoy their updates.
Yeah, they're actually one of my favorite brands to follow just because, like you said, they're not trying to monopolize your time. They're not trying to, go over the top. They're just doing what they do, sharing some quick and pithy information and, a little bit of humor here and there. But for the most part, it's just straightforward of here's some interesting information that's happening today in the world of technology, and this is how it affects you. And then usually after they do that for their first one, then their second one will be more of a, hey, have you ever wondered about how you can turn off this setting on your phone? Here's how you do it. And they show you a quick tutorial on how to do it. So, it's very useful stuff.
Yep. So let's just jump into Q4 because, of course, this is the thing that really trips people up. how do you measure the impact Snapchat has on your brands, such as ROI, awareness, and are there any tools that you recommend?
So the way that you measure success on Snapchat today is going to be different than it is once once Snapchat becomes a little bit more mature and has some more reporting mechanisms. But right now, there's no official reporting mechanisms outside of the paid ads that you do with Snapchat. So if you're a paid advertiser on Snapchat, you're going to get a lot of data. If you are just creating your own company account, or if you're hiring an influencer, the data you'll get back is the influencer will take screenshots of their impressions for each of the snaps that they do for you. And so you'll get to see total number of impressions. And another track that you'll be measuring is the completion rate for their stories. So a Snapchat story may be 3 to 5 snaps or even longer. And what you'll do is you'll track the number of views of the first snap of that story, and you'll compare that to the number of views for the last snap of the story, and you'll get a finishing rate. You'll see who's finishing those stories. And if you get a finishing rate that's 60 to 80%, then you've had a really successful campaign. So that's how the measurement is taking place now. Some firms are developing a little bit more insight than that. I'll check my notes and I'll give you some names of the firms that are doing that. But for right now, those are the two primary metrics that are being used to measure success.
Yeah, there's I believe it's Snapalytics is one of them, but I know Delmondo has a great and I mentioned them in the chat earlier. Delmondo has a great platform that can help you measure all that as well. When you use their service, they'll actually, tell you who's completing and who's viewing through all of your different clips of your Snap story. But it's really important stuff to be aware of. But the great thing about Snapchat is that it'll tell you specifically who viewed your story. I believe it's up to about 200 or maybe 400. But up to a certain number of people, you can actually see the username of every person that viewed that Snapchat story. So, that's better information you get on Twitter, right?
Yeah, and then you can send them all follow-up snaps if you're
right.
inclined.
You can really dig into that kind of stuff. It'll also show you who takes a screenshot of a specific clip or even a direct snap. It'll tell you when that stuff happens. So I know there are some people that will use screenshots as kind of a tool to measure voting. So in their story, they'll say, hey, vote on which one of these you think is best, or give me your opinion on what we should do. And take a screenshot of the one that you think we should do. And so they'll do that and they'll count the number and then they share it. There you go. It's like polling. But the other thing that does is it gets them to start saving your information in their camera roll, because they're going to go through, they're going to see that again, and guess who they're thinking about. These are all things you do. There are so many different variables to building a community, and Snapchat capitalizes on so many of them. It's not just about messaging. That's not what it's about. So get over that.
Yeah, I've had in my notes here, and I think it's in my Evernote, so I'll have to look it up there. But yeah, so we're still early going in terms of what we're doing in terms of reporting. And I know Delmondo has got some things because they work directly with the influencers, so they're able to link their account directly into the influencer account and extract that information out. But we're still early going. We've got some more to go there in terms of to get a little bit deeper analysis out. But really, the views, the impressions are the most important piece. And so far, from what I've seen, when you go influencer marketing through Snapchat, the impressions are really incredible. Shindoris, I think, is putting up 500,000 views per snap. That is ridiculous.
Yep. From what I understand, I think Sean Durst is probably one of the more successful ones. And I think he comes close to 1 million views per Snapchat story, which disappear in 24 hours. So you got to be on your game. So, these are not small numbers, and everyone who keeps saying, oh, it's not, my audience isn't there. that's not going to last for very long. You can't argue those numbers.
Yeah, that is really good numbers, and the value you're getting for hiring these influencers is pretty good value, I think, at the moment, because you're getting good dollar per view on this platform, and that may change, but for right now, it's a pretty nice platform to be on.
Yep, there you go.
1 million views. You can get much more than 1 million views in 24. So they did the Disney thing, Disney takeover. I'm sure they got in the tens of millions, and if not more, because they're doing multiple stories across several hours throughout the day, and you're talking in the tens of millions, maybe 100 million and up type viewing.
So let's also just continue our segueing. How about, we talked a lot about influencers and we started talking about this, but how about some other brands that are doing things well on Snapchat, such as Grubhub, which is a favorite Snapchat brand of mine?
We talked about some. Ben, what are your faves?
I think Ben is answering a question, potentially.
All right, are you guys back to my audio? Was cutting in and out.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, yeah, we wanted to know who your favorite brands were. I mentioned a few, like CoverGirl, CNET Snaps, Taco Bell, Disney.
Yeah. And then Ben,
so I throw out a thing there. A lot of great brands that I like to follow. Obviously, we talked about CNET Snaps are a good one. Mashable does pretty good. Disney, obviously, they've got Disneyland, Disney Studios. They've got a couple different accounts. Taco Bell's the obvious one. They're really good. Netflix is kind of fun. They'll show, I think last night they were doing they call it the purple carpet for a new TV show coming out. They do some behind the scenes stuff there. Shorty Awards, they're a lot of fun. COYW Canada, that's Chris McEwen and his yo-yo company. They do some really fun stuff there. And one of my personal favorites right now is probably Coca-Cola. They do some really, really entertaining stories. It's a lot of fun to watch. I know Markowitz H, he does a lot of their stories there, and he is absolutely brilliant. He just really knows what he's doing.
All right. Sounds good. Let's jump into Q6 because I want to make sure that we get all the questions in time. So, have recent tools like Stories and Discover made a more welcoming home for brands?
Yeah, I mean, without them, you've got nothing. So yeah, I think we talked about it earlier too when we talked about how Stories kind of opened the floodgates for mass user adoption of Snapchat, and it really turned the platform around in terms of overcoming the perception that it was just for sending disappearing messages to people. So yeah, absolutely. The answer to that question is absolutely yes. And the Discover area of Stories has been a real boon for brands like BuzzFeed, for example. BuzzFeed is driving incredible traffic to their site just from Snapchat. And I mean, I don't recall that. I just saw an Adweek article on the millions of views that they're driving, page views that they're driving to their website from Snapchat, which I thought was pretty incredible because I don't do a lot of clicking through on watching these stories, but evidently there is a large group of people who do. So yeah, just search Adweek, Snapchat, and BuzzFeed in Google, and you'll probably get that article.
Yeah, I think Discover obviously is probably the first thing people think about. You can spend a lot of money there, but it's only for a select few, and it's for big budgets only. So it's kind of a limited option. Stories, on the other hand, free, but it takes a lot more work. You got to cultivate, you got to be on your game, you got to be putting out content regularly. It doesn't necessarily have to be daily, but a couple times a week at least, so people can expect some kind of continuity. But like I said, it takes some work, and leveraging influencers can be a great way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So free to the extent that there's no ad fee, but not free in the fact that it costs money to create this content.
Sure, it is labor.
This is not something you assign. Yeah, you don't assign it to a staffer and say, okay, you run our Snapchat handle and come up with some creative stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a big mistake. So definitely you want to spend time finding the right person or people to start coming up with your Snapchat content, and treat it like you would your regular content for your blog or for Facebook or Twitter. Put some time and effort to plan it out. Create a content calendar. Just like every other platform, consistency is key. You need to consistently continue posting this content on a regular basis. And so you have to plan for that. And so that's going to cost you some money, and you're gonna have to have either people planning this out and executing on it, or you're going to need to find an agency like Del Mondo who can help you identify influencers and run either regular campaigns or sporadic campaigns around content that you're continuing to publish. Because it's crazy to get an influencer to take over your account, get thousands of new followers, and then not have any interesting content to show them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Jed, did Cicero put you up to that free plug? No, I'm just kidding.
Nick Cicero at Del Mondo, really on the leading edge here in terms of an agency who has got the influencer marketing strategy down for Snapchat.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
big fist bump to Nick.
Yeah, I drink semi-regularly with Nick, so anytime there's a chance to meet him a little bit, I have to take advantage of it because he will.
Snap that, man! Snap that!
But
snap some of those sessions,
actually,
man.
No, I don't think we ever snapped it. We've scoped it randomly. Well, there'll be more times. Anyway, let's get into 7. And we talked about this a little bit, but the best tools for content creation on Snapchat and the best way to build effective stories, or the best affordable way to build effective stories. Because we ask all the
my opinion. Yeah. My opinion on it is what you really need as far as tools. You need creativity, you need a little bit of time, but primarily just comes down to your imagination and a phone. That's all it is. The rest of it just takes work, it takes experience, it takes experimenting. But the best tools are at your fingertips, literally. You don't need to necessarily invest in anything other than the time and the labor.
Sounds about right. Jed, anything to add?
Again, I know I'm sounding like a broken record. It does take time and labor. It takes creativity most of all. So, and creativity takes time. That is being creative is not something that is spontaneous. You need to have somebody who is good at thinking outside of the box, good at thinking creative storytelling techniques, willing to try and fail. So, and as a manager or as a CMO that's looking at finding somebody to manage that process, you've got to give them the reins and be willing to say, this might not work on our first try, but we got to get out there and try it. And so be loose and don't expect that every campaign is going to be a win. So you've got to nurture creativity. You can't delegate and assign it.
Yeah, it's there's a reason creative agencies exist, and because creativity is a huge deal. You know, it's a means of communications. It's a way that helps people actually consume what it is that you are trying to say, and by proxy, what you're trying to sell.
Oh, absolutely, Gary. And I agree that there needs to be storytelling and some strategy, but some people, and those are the people who are best on your team, or to have on your team for Snapchat, who are natural storytellers. You know, some people just can tell a story like that. There's not much preparation because that's the way they're built. And I see that even, I tweeted it out, Jed, that, our digital manager and myself, when we're traveling together, we'll both have Snapchat on, and what he will picture and what he'll snap out is different than I will. And we're at the same event, we're having the same experience, we're eating the same food, and but it's different what we see and how he tells stories. And he's a natural storyteller, and I love that it's relational. And you really have to have somebody with that focus of being relational and not transactional. And that's tough sometimes for marketers to make that jump. So I just caution you when you do that with Snapchat. Really, it does. I think Ben brought it up. Somebody who has experience with it, who really understands and embraces that platform, not just as something to use, but actually it's an extension of their storytelling.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely a culture too on Snapchat. So you got to respect that. You can't just roll in with your own, concept of what people are going to like. You've got to experience it. You've got to understand that culture, like Ben was saying, and then form your content to kind of align with, or at least kind of here I am trying to tell you to be creative and do something different, but also respect the culture that's there, right? So you don't just drop in highly edited photos or videos that have a huge production involvement to them, because that's just not the culture of Snapchat. It's more relaxed, casual, fun, and spontaneous.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think
Ben's getting some big props there from iSocial fans.
Brian
Manza is saying that Ben is the best writer out there on Snapchat, and I think I agree with that. Hey, while we're on that subject, can we drop a link to Snapchat strategy in there?
Sure can.
So, yeah, that's something that would fit well with the audience here, and they can read more about Snapchat after the chat's over.
Yeah, so I started putting together this little publication on Medium, just a collection of different writings and stuff about Snapchat, and I'm obviously always adding to it. Just a lot of different ideas, around execution and innovation using the platform. Appreciate that, Brian, making me blush a little bit. But like Jed was saying, you got to respect the platform. You got to come into it understanding that there's a certain mentality and psychology behind it, and just respect that, but then play within it. Don't come in there throwing your weight around. Just try to be creative and do your own thing. Have an idea of what you want to do. Have a strategy behind it, which doesn't take, millions of dollars to put together. It's just a little bit of brainstorming. Just say, hey, look, this is what I want to accomplish, and then test it out. See if it works. If it doesn't, then adapt. But at the end of the day, all you really need to do is just be intelligent and just communicate with people. If you have a constant conversation with the people that you interact with and you engage with, then you're going to know what works and what doesn't work, and then you're going to become better and better. I mean, I went from, 2 people a day looking at what I do to a couple hundred, and that's just because I interact with the people that I'm there with, and I try to do things that are important. They're important to me. They're important to the people that I communicate with, and we go from there.
Yeah, and so let's take a minute talk about user discovery, because this is an issue with the platform, particularly with a brand wanting to get a following. And so Ben just triggered, that thought in my head, is when you're trying to grow a following for your either your personal Snapchat account or for your brand or for your small business, people finding out about you, there's no search in there. You're not going to search and find a company to follow. So you need to be doing the promotion outside of Snapchat for people to follow you. And that's why you'll see on my profile, I think on Ben's too, we have this is your Snapchat code, right? So this is what we've been sharing in the chat. And so people know what we're talking about. You go into the app and you hit the little ghost at the top, and you hit that ghost right up at the top here, and that's your Snapchat code. And you need to put that on all of your social sharing sites. So you need to tweet that out. You need to put it on Facebook. You need to promote it, put it on your counter of your business if you're a small business and you're promoting your Snapchat channel. I've got like a animated GIF in there, but you don't need to have that. You can just have a regular flat picture. And if you're in this on your iPhone, if you go up here to the top right of your phone, there's a little button here. It's a sharing button. You just hit that button there, and a screen will come up here, and then you can just share it. You can either share it on social, or you can do what I've done, which is just download it to my camera roll, and then I can send it to my desktop, and I can start putting it and inserting it into other graphics, like into my header on Twitter and into my profile image on Facebook.
Yep.
So get to know this Snapchat code, because that's how you're going to promote your account.
Yeah, in fact, there's a great place online to find other people to follow as well. It's actually called snapchat.codes, and you can find, they have different categories and everything else there. In fact, I'll put up a link right now. So you can actually go there and
I think Ben is in there under the storytellers, right?
Yeah.
Ben, are you in that?
I got featured a couple weeks ago, and I had no idea. I was like, where am I getting all these ads from? So
it's a great place to find influencers and creatives to get ideas from, and Ben is in there under the storyteller category. So go check it out, see who else is in there.
So let's just get this last question in before we have to go in a few minutes. What first 3 steps would you recommend to a brand considering Snapchat?
Great question.
So click on Snapchat codes. That's step number 1. Go download the app, follow creative, interesting people on Snapchat. You'll find them there on Snapchat codes. Follow Opera Americano and Honduras. I'll put their info in the tweet, and then just start engaging and participating in the Snapchat community. This is not something you want to jump into next week. This is something that you need to get an understanding for. You need to follow and engage with people on Snapchat and get a feel for using the platform as a user before you even consider, what your brand strategy is going to be for Snapchat. So for the time being, your first steps to me is download the app, follow some interesting people, start engaging and learning about Snapchat. This is not something you have to rush into. We've got plenty of time. We're early in the game. Now is the time to listen and learn. And in the spring, budget some money to go give it a try and see what you guys can do.
Absolutely. It's all about, you got to observe. And for those of you trying to click on it inside of NERF, the code the website I give out, it's cutting off the S for some reason. So just type in snapchat.codes and you'll get right there. But as far as, how to get started on it, like I said, do your research, observe, watch how people are using it, watch how the influencers are using it, get great ideas. I try to watch all the people I follow at least daily, because I like to see what's going on. I like to see if somebody's got a better idea than I do. So do your research, learn about it, learn how people are using it, observe, and then after you do your research, you need to jump in and you need to plan it a little bit. You need to have an idea, a plan of attack of what are we going to do with this? What do we want to do? Whenever you do a story, plan it out, have a beginning, middle, and end, because it's a story, right? And then after you do that, just be consistent. Don't get on there and snap for a week and then you're gone for a month. I mean, people are going to start to expect certain things. If you have a specific style that you have on there, keep that style. Don't be changing it up so much. If you're, I'll give you a great example. I'm not the kind of person that on Snapchat I like to talk a lot, so I don't do that. And whenever I do, then I notice that the retention numbers start to go down because that's just not the way that I'm most effective. So I stop doing that. So you have to be consistent.
Yep. Well, on that note, I will thank both Ben and Jed, since we are at the end of our time. Thank you both for sharing your insights and ideas about